Well, first off, thank you for being here today. Thanks to CSA for making SaaS Connect happen. One of the hardest parts for us as a team when we were getting out was like, hey, almost 3.5 years of building Pronto, and 3 years of it was COVID, and we even haven't stepped out of the houses, and now we're in a conference, talking about Pronto, so it's a big shift from what we were doing until yesterday to what we're doing today. So thanks to CSA and the entire team for making this. Right? So Swaroop Kolli, founder and CEO of Pronto. Like many of you, I started my career in different roles, but ended up landing up in BD partnerships, leading large alliances, and taking ownership of some stuff. So where did it all start? Just to give you a quick background of myself. Like most brown people in the Valley, I started off my career as an engineer. I did my first startup right now, 15 years ago, back in India, trying to question the services economy of India and trying to build a product economy. I can't say I was very successful, but I learned quite a bit. In more ways than one, I say I fell flat on my face, but it was a decent exit that funded my tickets to get to the US. Did my MBA, very focused on entrepreneurship and venture capital. Graduated and took a very conscious decision of going into management consulting. And honestly speaking, that's my first tryst with partnerships. Worked with some of the large enterprises in technology, media, telecom, and you're talking about the likes of Cisco, Microsoft, VMware, NetApps of the world, looking at their partner ecosystems, people process technology, helping them solve the pain points. And look, truth be told, I was drinking too much of the management consulting Kool-Aid. The light bulb for Pronto didn't glow up at that point in time, but I think it was good. That led me into a whole role of corporate venture capital and BD and partnerships, right? Where I was brought in to build a large partner ecosystem, and that's where it all started. And it was an interesting time, right? Building a partner ecosystem from scratch. You've been helping sort of companies by telling them, hey, do this, do that, you got to correct this, you got to correct that. But when you start doing this from scratch and trying to build it, that's where you get to see sort of tactically how challenging some of this could get. And some of the challenges, right, that I face. Again, I'm sure some of us continue to do this even today, where we track pipeline information in spreadsheets. We track number of partners, what is the stage of each partner in a spreadsheet. When your ecosystem is small, it works, skunk works. Sharing pipeline data, I still remember times where classic QBRs, right? Need to show up with metrics, show up graphs in a PowerPoint, and the pipeline data would all be tracked either in a Google Sheet or a spreadsheet, which is going back and forth in an email. And in the last minute, someone didn't update a Google Sheet. My metrics are off. The metrics they are presenting to their C-suite versus what we are presenting to our C-suite becomes very different. You're on a stage, both the CEOs are meeting, you're caught with your pants down, right? I was fortunate I wasn't getting fired. Building these joint solutions, and we are talking about deep tech alliances, right? You're building joint solutions, you're building integrations, you're bundling them, and you're trying to sell them in the market, while building joint solutions in a very large enterprise, which has multiple business units, multiple stakeholders, that itself is hard. Now, if you want to get these solutions to the market, it gets even harder, right? You are probably a couple of layers removed from your sales team, so how do you accelerate the go-to-market side of the puzzle, right? Internal and external alignment. Sometimes when internal alignment happens, the external alignment fails. Sometimes external alignment is there, internal alignment doesn't work. Very rarely would it happen that the different business units, the leaders of the business units, and the external partners, the sponsors are all aligned, and it usually takes a ton of time to get this alignment, right? If enablement or sales trainings from partner solution standpoint is something what we think takes time, alignment in a large organization when you have solutions cutting across multiple business units and multiple teams is even more complex. Right? Measuring and reporting and repeatability, I'm sure a lot of us see this all the time. Look, I think there's still a lot of management consultant in me where measuring and metrics is very, very important. And we measure metrics at a very, very granular level. And when you're tracking a lot of this information in spreadsheets, most of the times you're getting access to some form of pipeline, some form of pricing information, customer, industry, and that's it, right? How much time does it take to onboard a partner? How much time does it take to activate a partner? How much time does it take from the time of activation to really formulating a solution, to building a solution, to enabling a team, to a campaign? How many people are collaborating at both the ends? Who is connected at what level? All of these are metrics which were so very important to figure out what is working in one single relationship, or two, or three, or five, that I can now really replicate across my entire ecosystem. None of that existed. There was no repeatability, right? I'll be the first person to say, I didn't hit the ball out of the park. There were probably a couple of partnerships which worked. It really worked. I mean, like, we really stepped on the gas, made them work. But there were a ton of partnerships which didn't. And there's no shame in me admitting it. I wasn't the best cookie on the planet. I wish I was, but it wasn't, right? And that's the results, right? Like, I don't think we need to dive deeper into this, but fundamentally, all these pain points result in partnerships not really gaining traction. Every BD person, every partner manager who starts a partnership always starts with a good intention. Let's make this partnership work. Let's make it generate revenue for both parties, right? No, it doesn't happen. Like, if I think there are enough metrics in the market which talk about 60% of partnerships fail. I think the failure rate is probably much higher than what we can. Because we can't measure all these, it becomes hard. The second one is the one which would give me a lot of heartache. In the hallways of a large enterprise, we would get stopped, and we would be like, hey, what do you do? Oh, I work in BD and partnerships. What does that mean? Like, what do you guys do? Like, what value do you bring to the company? How much revenue are you contributing, or what percentage of revenue do you contribute because of what you're doing? And we can tell them all sorts of answers, but no one's going to give us any credit. And that was the world that I was living in, right? The other one, and the misalignment and lack of visibility, we talked about it previously, but the QBRs were the interesting part, right? Because, we are putting our PowerPoint decks most of the times. We'll pretty them up, and as a management consultant, that's all that I did, building PowerPoint decks. So, I could pretty up a good PowerPoint deck and make it look like it would work, right? And this was the funny part. My CEO, and this company is now probably a $60 billion industrial company, and my CEO called me one day, and he's like, look, you have a pretty good PowerPoint. All the numbers look great. Why am I not seeing top-line growth? So something is not working. So what is not working? There's no answer, all right? And that sort of brings me to this whole point of, like, all of us want to try and fix things, make headway, generate revenue, grow up the ladder. All of that are natural progressions of career. And looking at what is it that I want to fix. The first one is, hey, there are a lot of portals, so let's try and implement a portal, right? Maybe a partner portal that would work. And the challenge with this is it doesn't sit with the values of how we wanted to build our partner ecosystem, because a partner ecosystem for me is where I'm treating my partners as equal. It doesn't matter how big or small of a company you are. I want to treat you as equal because you are bringing value. The equality is more driven by value, not necessarily by the size of the company or how much revenue you generate, right? What is the value that you can deliver to my end customer by partnering with me is what I'm going to look at. And that means I want to have deep collaboration capabilities, which a lot of portals At least at that point in time, and this was 3.5, 4 years ago, that didn't exist, right? And most of the portals that were there at that point in time were fundamentally built for resell go-to-market motions. They weren't built for co-sell, and sometimes sort of quasi co-sell resell plays, because sometimes it could be a resell, sometimes it could be an OEM, sometimes it could be a co-sell. So how do you have like one single portal which actually does all of this? It didn't work for us. This is probably what most used to do at that point in time. Hey, I have a CRM system which is very flexible, is powered by a platform. Let me customize this, right? Great. But the unfortunate truth is, CRMs weren't built for partnerships. CRMs were built for sales teams. They were supposed to be within the four walls of an organization, not supposed to be accessed by external teams. And I call the CRM, the nerve center of an organization. They house the core information, right? So I'm not going to give access. My IT team, you're talking about a $60 billion company. There's no way they're giving partners access to a CRM, right? And this is what all of us land upon, right? Finally, if nothing works, hey, let's go create a new spreadsheet. Let's start working through it. Let's start putting, there's a sheet for tasks. There is a sheet for pipeline. There's a sheet for partner directory. There's a sheet for partner stages. There's a sheet for pivot tables, right? That's what. And yeah, it works, but it's not a scalable model when you're starting to have 100, 150, 300 partners in your ecosystem that you are trying to build within a span of 18 months. It is not a scalable model. And I tried it, trust me. And that's where it comes, right? Like where we would go and interview companies, because this is not the first time. I'm not the first, alliance leader or director of partnerships or whatever title I had. I'm not the first person. There are a lot of people who must be facing this. They might have solved this pain point. So we went I think the numbers here are probably, we lost track of this after a point in time where over 180 companies, more than 300 plus subject matter experts. Now when I look at these numbers, I'm like, gosh, I spent a lot of time trying to talk to other people. And the interesting part was that there were common themes. And this is, by the way, not just within the technology industry. This is across pharma, this is across biotech, this is across banking and financial services, this is across insurance, this is across industrial companies, manufacturing. All industries continue to face the same pain points. Current systems don't work, they're not scalable, they were built 15, 20, 30 years ago with probably some of them continue to have archaic architectures, they're not really scaling as per our partner ecosystem. Right? But the interesting summary that came out of all these conversations was, we are moving, if we haven't already, into a globally connected network of businesses. It's happening right in front of our eyes. Companies are getting connected with each other, and this is not just within the industry, this is happening cross industries as well. You see Google partnering with Kaiser. So if you get a Kaiser plan, you might get a Fitbit. And why do you get a Fitbit? Because Kaiser wants to understand what are your data patterns, how are you using it, so that I can now start targeting really focused insurance plans towards what you want to buy, and that might actually reduce the cost. And from a company perspective, I would really like that because I'm paying less from an employer insurance perspective, right? So it works both ways, right? You're seeing actually Domino's now partnering with local mom and pop restaurants so that they can actually give you a flyer of a menu that you can now start ordering from a Domino's order, and Domino's will go get it from the local mom and pop shop and give it to you. So, the example of Moderna is right in front of us. Like the reason why Moderna was able to release a vaccine so fast when compared to any of the competitors was actually because of partnerships. Because they would license these molecules from all these smaller laboratories from which they have actually partnered, which became the nerve center of the whole Moderna COVID vaccine, right? So this is happening right in front of our eyes. And the common theme that emerged out of all these subject matter interviews and companies is, how would it be if we had like one whole system of engagement that we can build, that we can actually manage all these partnerships? Because today a reseller, tomorrow an alliance, the day after a referral, and after that maybe I'm gonna acquire them, right? So the same partner navigates across different journeys, and eventually one or the other, either they're gonna merge or someone is gonna acquire, or it's time to divest out of a partnership because now the partner is becoming a competitor because they have grown with you, right? So that was the idea, right? So again, once a founder and an entrepreneur, I think it's hard to shake it off. You always come back to the same thing. You want to do it again and again, how much ever painful it is. And the solution was this, which is, how do we build one single platform from a partnerships perspective, irrespective of the nature of the relationship or the go-to-market motion or the industry that you're operating in? Right? That was the conceptualization of the solution, which led to Pronto, right? So you've seen this slide earlier as well, which is, hey, these are my challenges. From starting with these challenges to now where Pronto is, we address all of this with a single platform, all the way from measuring your reporting and metrics at the click of a button, to figuring out what is working with a partnership that I can actually take and scale it with the rest of my partner ecosystems, to being able to not just really track just the names of solutions, but all the way from putting a project plan about the solutions, inviting individuals from internal and external to collaborating, all of that, right? All of that is something that Pronto addresses, and that is, there's an analytics layer which sits on, yeah. So something that we actually start with Pronto, and this is probably one of the foundational things that we did is, hey, every partnership, especially once you start having a segment of partners, all the way from building your programs to tracking your solutions and project managing those solutions, to collaborating internally and externally, to your go-to-market motions associated with marketing and selling, and that includes all the way from deal registration, pipeline, revenue splits, tracking consumption, like all of that, to lead pass, lead sharing, to something which is becoming the future of Pronto, hopefully, is the whole ability from a discovery and commerce standpoint. I have my solutions, I have my go-to-market motions. How do I enable my sales teams with all the joint solutions that I have built, or the integrations that I have with my partners, what we call as solution catalogs? I have 100 partners, and there are a bunch of functional areas within my organization which is asking, hey, what is the value that you bring to the table? There is partner directories, and you can build multiple partner directories, right? To, hey, my customers actually want to be able to access the integrations and solutions from within my product. So we actually have an embeddable marketplace that goes and sits within your product, right? All of this was built by a small team, and these are our core functional and analytics capabilities, and Sunir and the CSA team said, hey, please don't do a product pitch, you're not here to sell. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, we're not. But the foundational of this is the platform, right? And we consciously take a platform-centric approach to this. We do not take a product and a tool-centric approach, right? And the reason why we do that is, today it is co-sell, tomorrow it could be something else. Today it is technology industry, tomorrow it could be pharma, biotech, fintech, automotive, manufacturing, right? When you take a tool-centric approach, you start getting constrained about taxonomies, what you can change, what you can do, what you cannot do. But all of this functional and analytical capabilities that you're seeing is completely powered by a platform-centric approach. And this is the reason why we have been under wraps for so long. In fact, this is the first ever conference that we have gotten out and put a booth where the underlying platform is fundamentally built in a way it is completely scalable, it is extensible, but most importantly, it is probably one of the most secure platforms out there in the market when it comes to partner ecosystem management. And I'm not saying just because I want people to really get interested in Pronto, and I'm saying this because more than 50% of Pronto's engineering team actually comes with deep, deep, deep cybersecurity expertise. In fact, my co-founder here, who likes to be under the shadows, and he's sitting in the last row here, he's been one of the founding engineers of many zero trust authentication and cybersecurity companies that today are massive unicorns or public companies, right? So every single thing in the platform is built with security. There are many times I tell him, hey, accelerate the feature development. We really need to get a customer. And he's like, nope, not doing it. Needs to be secure. But the interesting part of this is in the 3.5-year journey of Pronto, we are actually humbled by how many companies actually use us today. It actually matches 3.5 and 350 from very large enterprises like Google Cloud and IBM Red Hat, where we power their entire partner ecosystems, whether it be a managed service provider, a system integrator, or an ISV tech alliance, to a very boutique SMB company where they only probably want to manage their reseller partnerships. We cover the entire breadth, right? And all of this would not happen, and these are the metrics that we talk about, which is the power of the platform is in a way that one of our customers today actually onboards partners at 5 times faster than what they were able to onboard previously, where for them to review one single inbound partner application, they would take more than 3 or 4 days because they have to go offline, look at Zoom info, look at Crunchbase, what is the partner, how much funding they have, am I going to accept this, yada, yada, yada. Today, they do it all within Pronto, and Pronto will actually signal you whether you should partner or you should not partner. Right? And one of our customers, we discovered like 30 million, and this is not written there, but that 30 million was discovered within the first 3 months of deploying Pronto. It is not in 1 year, it is not in 2 years, it is not in 3 years. Within the first 3 months of deploying Pronto, and they were partners which were actually classified as tier 2 that have gotten reclassified today as tier 1 partners because of the amount of pipeline that they were able to discover. Right? And on an average, look, a lot of us spend time doing reports for our QBRs where it takes quite a bit of time. If you're building a QBR deck and if you don't have all the data and all the dashboards, we're probably spending anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks before the QBR to actually put the PowerPoint together. And today, on an average with Pronto, a partner manager saves 10 hours just on metrics. Just on metrics, forget about everything else, right? And these are some of our customer quotes where, this is from IBM Red Hat, where they talk about how they were able to enable their sales teams, how they were able to get a lot more performance or visualize the performance, not just of each relationship, but the entire ecosystem. Like imagine someone like Red Hat, right? You're talking about thousands of partners, right? Imagine actually having all of them on one single platform and in one ecosystem dashboard. I'm getting to see what percentage of these partners are performing and which ones are not, where should I double down, where should I divest, right? 2, companies where they are just integrations, they are just integration partnerships, or in some cases, the taxonomy is called as technology partnerships. There might not actually be a go-to-market motion in some of these cases. How do I make sure that these long-tail partners, from an onboarding to building the integration to getting access, how do they do that, right? All of that actually happens because of Pronto. And all of this wouldn't have happened without a small team. We are just, by the way, 35 people. And most of that growth is actually pretty recent, right? And all of us wake up thinking about partners, thinking about one single mission statement, which is, how do we help our customers really grow revenues and measure the ROI from their partner ecosystem with the same level of rigor that the direct lines of businesses have been doing for decades? What we miss from a partner ecosystem management perspective is the amount of rigor that needs to go in. Because, look, managing internally within your own organization is hard, Now you're trying to step beyond the boundaries and working with the partners, that's even more harder, right? So how do you manage this from a rigor perspective is what we do, right? And before I go into the lessons learned, this is something that I want to say, which is Pronto is built for you. It's not built for a sales team. It's not built for the C-suite execs. Pronto is built for the partner managers, for the partner executives, for the alliance leaders, because a good chunk of our team actually comes from BD and partnerships who have been specifically handpicked so that they have the subject matter expertise to build it, because BD is a black box. Let's be honest. There are not a lot of books out there which tell us, hey, this is about BD and partnerships. This is where you start. This is how you build it, right? There's no established taxonomy, right? So it has been built very specifically for the partnerships people of today and of the future, because that is the world that we are gonna enter into, right? And one of my mentors, and who is an advisor of Pronto and also an investor of Pronto, told me this, and he's a C-suite public exec who built a company ground up and took it public. And he told me this thing, which is, BD is a function which gives you the best training wheels of becoming a founder and a CEO. And that was a very, very interesting statement that stuck with me for a very, very long time. So there's 7 lessons which I learned during the time of BD, which actually apply every day for me as a founder and a CEO, right? Let's go over some of those lessons, right? I think all of us talk about this, which is the outside-in and the inside-out approach, right? Actually, we talk a lot about outside-in approach in partnerships. We don't talk so much about inside-out approach. In fact, we actually, there's a lot of advocates in the market where they talk about don't do the inside-out approach, and I'm actually gonna tell you do both outside-in and inside-out approach, and I'll give you actually a real-life example, right? See, the outside-in approach is pretty straightforward, which is put your customer front and center, put the user journey, identify what are those friction points, how can you plug in partners, where can you drive more value with the partners, how can you make the product sticky. Very classic outside-in partner strategy approach, right? The inside-out approach is extremely important, the reason being especially when you're trying to build partnerships with someone like system integrators or managed service providers, right? These are companies or segments of partnerships which fundamentally generate revenue because of services. The inside-out approach is more about, is your product ready for you? Does it have enough hooks that an SI can build a services layer around it? Does it have enough complexity that an SI can come and say, I'm gonna take the complexity piece when I'm deploying into a customer, right? Do I have the right set of culture to support the partner? Do I have the right level of C-suite sponsorship? Are they interested in, right? Because partnerships are not like, oh, I'm gonna put a quarter in today and tomorrow morning I'm gonna get $1 out. Absolutely not, right? It's a long road. They are investments for the long term, right? So you always have to think about the outside-in and the inside-out approach, right? And the interesting part as a founder for me is this applies to my role. The outside-in approach is, hey, what does a customer want? What does today's partner ecosystem want? Because I can build something extremely futuristic, but it's not really going to help because we won't be able to sell, right? So what is it that the market wants? What is actually ticking? What is not ticking? What is the right set of messaging? Let's do an A/B test. All of that is the outside-in approach. And the inside-out approach is, do I actually have the right culture to support it? Am I at the right maturity cycle as a startup to actually be able to support that go-to-market motion, right? Should I really start looking at building resell partnerships when I have a small team of 30 or 35 people supporting this? Absolutely not, right? Because it takes a lot of heavy lifting. So the same lesson of outside-in and inside-out approach that we would always apply in BD and partnerships is something that I continue to apply as a founder. The organizational support and alignment is key, right? I mean, we talked about this, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree that, hey, without the organizational support and different functions aligning, it's going to be hard. And something that I've realized over a period of time, especially building these partnerships in the long term, is your product organization, your engineering organization, your marketing organization, your sales organization, your legal, all these organizations need to really support and align with what you're doing from a partnerships perspective. Sales, obviously, right? Like, they are the ones who are selling in the market, so you want to make sure that they're aligned with the partnership that you're building. But a lot of the product and engineering organizations actually become extremely critical, because sometimes you might want to change an integration, or you need to build an integration. And with consumption becoming mainstream, right? Consumption pricing models, I still remember as a management consultant, we used to call them the utility billing models. Now it's called as the consumption billing model or a consumption model. And consumption took a long time to become mainstream. I wouldn't say it has completely become mainstream yet. I think hyperscalers definitely are the ones which are leading from a consumption standpoint, but more and more companies are starting to adopt consumption-based pricing models. And with consumption becoming mainstream, your engineering and product organizations will become extremely important. Because if they are not able to leave enough hooks or be able to track consumption, there is no way that we as BD and partnerships folks will actually be able to price or partner based on those consumption models. Right? And that's the same for me as a founder, because sometimes we hit some dead ends and we might have to pivot. We might have to change a strategy. We might have to change a messaging, right? And if I don't have support from my team, or if I'm not aligned with my sales or my marketing team, then we are starting to go off on divergent paths, and that's never good. Right? I think the start small and then scale is something that I will always advocate, especially, this probably applies more so for companies sort of who fall in the SMB segment and are starting to think about partnerships. I think when you're small, it gives you sort of enough leeway to experiment. You're not investing a lot, so you can run a bunch of tests with your partners. Some will work, some will not work, but it gives you the room to actually experiment and then scale and repeat. And once you start getting to a point where this is something that you want to scale, that's where you start getting more and more partners and starting to repeat, right? And at some point in time, it'll plateau. It'll plateau. Even those tests will fail, right? But you have done enough number of tests in the past, and you have enough metrics that you've collected in the past that you can actually bring them back from a scaling perspective and rerun those tests and now see what is working, right? And as a founder, that applies to me every day, right? Like, we do a ton of things that don't scale. Like, ton of things. And like, for example, like SaaS Connect is a prime example of it, right? Like, we did a ton of things which actually, if you ask me, Swaroop, you have to do this for the next 10 days and show up in SaaS Connect and have some stuff doing this. There's absolutely no way what worked right now will actually work for the next 10 days, right? But it gives us an ability where we know what has worked and what didn't work, so it helps me from a scaling perspective. Right? I think socializing internally becomes extremely important so that you don't have to face the question of, hey, what is it that the BD and partnerships team do? What value do we bring to the table? So I think socialization helps quite a bit. But when you think about socialization, I think we have to always talk about value proposition to the end customer. I think that's what all of us will lead with. And that's an important lesson for all of us when we were doing BD and partnerships where, hey, let's socialize the partnership. Sometimes even before we ink a partnership, we would socialize it to see how is this message resonating from an audience perspective. And if there is dominantly a positive uptick, then yes, we would go ahead and ink a partnership. Versus sometimes we would socialize and we would get a lot of pushback because the partner might have this small little product which competes. It might not be the most successful product of the partner, but it still competes with you in the market, and there is a business unit which is starting to push back on you because, hey, that's a competition, so let's not go ahead and partner with it, right? And you don't want to get into those junctures after you sign a partnership agreement and the C-suite execs have met, because at that point it becomes a face-saving exercise trying not to do it, right? So that internal socialization helps, right? And this is important for me internally as a team because, look, we work crazy hours as a startup. So, the light bulb glows up at 2 a.m. in the morning and someone's taking down notes and, next day morning I might quickly jump onto my marketing team and say, hey, let's just go ahead and execute this. And the sales might not have any insights into, hey, what did we do this and why did we do it? So that internal socialization becomes extremely important. And this is very classic law of physics, right? Which is when you have multiple forces that are coming together and aligning, you will actually be able to you'll be able to make a lot more progress and grow exponentially, which is you're growing faster, all your forces are aligned, and that is fundamentally what socialization helps you with. Right? 5, incentivize and enable your sellers. I think, again, straightforward. The enablement of, I think I won't hit upon incentivization quite a bit because I think incentivization is needed, whether it is from a dollars perspective or whatever contests you want to run from an incentive perspective, all of that is great. But the enablement of the sellers is probably one of the challenges that we as an industry in the technology continue to face, which is our sellers will always sell our products better, right? They know it, they know the taxonomy, they know at the back of their hand, they can always go in front of a customer and they'll be able to sell amazingly well. But then you're bringing a partner product or a partner solution, your sellers most likely do not understand the partner product or the architecture completely. So how do you enable your sellers so that if not they understand the architecture completely, can they do the exception handling from a partner product standpoint? Is there something that we can educate them from an enablement standpoint about a partner product? Or what is the value proposition or the joint value proposition that the customer gets, right? That enablement part becomes extremely important, right? And there's an interesting story here about what we face as a startup, which is enabling our sellers of Pronto. I think Scott's probably here. Yeah, Scott. One of the hardest part of enabling these sellers is, Scott, no offense meant, look, BD is a black box. BD is a black box that no one knows other than the BD and partnerships team. And as a startup, when we are going out and recruiting really capable, stellar salespeople, you want the salespeople to understand the lingo, the taxonomy, the workflows, because they are going and doing a complex sale in the market. So, most of the times you'll see sales teams actually coming from the same industry. Oh, I'm working in a cybersecurity company X, move to second, move to third, so on and so forth. So they already have the intrinsic knowledge about that particular industry or the segment. And that becomes hard for us because BD is a black box. So I still need to continue to enable my sales team, my marketing team on lingo and taxonomy, and that is something that I do every day as a founder. I think measure, and measure. I'm sure all of us want to measure analytics and metrics, but the one lesson that I learned about measurement is don't only measure your leading indicators, which tend to be revenue and pipeline. Get into the next level. Talk about how many people are collaborating. Talk about how frequently are they collaborating. Tie the rate of success of a pipeline or revenue growth to individuals and how frequently they're collaborating, whatever technology or a platform they use, right? Because a lot of collaboration transparency will tie into the success or failure of partnerships, right? So measure every granular data that you can get access to, right? And for us, from a business perspective as a startup, we really measure everything, all the way from what is the source of a lead, where did they click, what time did they come from, what is our North Star metric, what percentage of our North Star metrics did we achieve? Like, it gets into very granular detail because that is the only way it will inform our strategy. think last lesson that I have before I wrap this up, and this is probably the most important piece of partnerships, be human about this. Partnerships is a people business. I think in the fast-paced world that we live in, I think somewhere we forget that we are humans. We are starting, or we tend to take the sides of companies that the shirts we wear, and always remember that it's a people business. Organizations are very similar to humans. We have a soul. Organizations have a soul, which is called as culture, which is built by individuals. And all of us need to respect that. And the more truthful, honest relationships we build with other parties, it's okay. Some partnerships won't work. That's okay. But the same individuals will go to another company, will come back to partner with you if you have built a true relationship. And that's been my experience, both from building partnerships to running a company, because we wake up at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and we call each other, and it's like, hey, this is happening with Red Hat. How can we help? Let's talk about this strategy. And we really go deep and deep and deep at 2 a.m., at 3 a.m. at night, because we really care about the humans on the other side who are running the partnerships business. Right. That's it.